success is their claim to fame. On the podcast, they light the spark, elevating your skills, creating a mark. Let's dive deeper into the playbook.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Customer Success Playbook Podcast. I'm Roman Trebon, and with me always is my co-host, Kevin Metzger. Please give our show a rating, subscribe, and like so we can continue to grow our audience. Kevin, football started last week, and your Clemson Tigers took it on the chin. How you feeling this week?
Yeah, well, we'll see. It'll be a long season, but looking forward to it anyway.
Yeah, well, hopefully you're looking forward to this conversation we're having coming up. Well, way more than that Clemson football season, because I'm way more excited about this than your Clemson offense. Kev, we got a great guest on the show today. We have the pleasure of speaking with Katie Clark, Implementation Manager at PocketHealth. Katie's a skilled leader in project delivery and has a deep understanding of the complexities involved in securing stakeholder buy-in. With her experience in managing large-scale implementation projects, Katie has honed the art of crafting compelling narratives and driving organizational momentum to ensure successful project outcomes. In today's episode of the Customer Success Playbook, we'll explore the critical steps to securing internal stakeholder buy-in for major initiatives. This is so important. I'm looking forward to this. Katie's going to walk us through the process of understanding your audience, generating momentum within your team, crafting compelling messages, overcoming resistance, as well as celebrating success. We'll dive into actionable strategies that you can use to ensure your project has the support it needs to succeed. Katie, first off, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with why is it so important to secure stakeholder buy-in when you're launching a critical project that's so important and vital for an organization?
I think this is true whether it's an internal project or in customer implementations. Your key stakeholders are the decision makers at the end of the day. They're the ones who say yes or no, have final approval. They're the ones who can give you the resources that you need, whether it's like you need budget for new tools, you need bodies to make things happen. So if you're not able to get buy-in and support from these key stakeholders, you're never going to see any momentum in your project. And to get very hypothetical and emotional about it, your career will stagnate. It's hard to progress unless you're able to take big swings and show you can be a driving force to change and success at any growing organization.
So, could you take us through the process of knowing your audience and explain why it's essential for securing buy-in from the different types of stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you guys probably know this better than most people hosting a podcast, but people don't respond to things in the same way. Everybody is driven by different kinds of motivation. If you're speaking to a diverse group of people, you need to understand not just what they want to hear, but what motivates them to truly care and want to invest in something. So generally, I found in my experience, I've created three sort of buckets of stakeholders: founders, investors, and community. Founders tend to have much more emotional or personal stakes in whatever organization you're working with. Investors are really driving that financial aspect of it. These community stakeholders are more like the people who are the voice of your customer. Whether you're driving something really big internally or working with a client-facing project, you're going to have one of these three stakeholders or multiple of them that you need to kind of get. So understanding how to speak to somebody's emotional motivations, financial motivations, and, voicing of the customer, that's the best way to make sure you are being heard and really able to get the support that you need.
So, Katie, how do you tactically go about this as you're kicking off a project with a client, or maybe it's internal? I'm sure they don't come with name badges that say founder, investor, community, right? How do you go about kind of identifying who they are, who they may be, and what's really important for them?
Yeah, the name tags would be really helpful. I'm going to start pushing for that at every new project that we kick off. If we're talking externally, a lot of these initial touch points come from the sales process. A part of these handoffs that we do internally is understanding who are the people they've been speaking to before the project closes, what things got them really interested in the sales cycle, what things did they, were they trepidatious about before signing and closing. That helps me and my team to understand who it is that we're speaking to, what problems we need to navigate, and how we can make sure that they're seeing success within this project. You made a joke about name tags earlier, but honestly, job title does actually tell us a lot sometimes, especially internally. When you're navigating the big project at your own growing organization, You know who the leaders are, who these people are at these different teams, at these different levels. You know what sorts of projects they've been running internally or jobs they worked before to get to where they are. And then honestly, a lot of it comes down to just having a conversation with somebody. If you can spend a few minutes chatting with them and asking them some questions about what they really like about the job they're in or what things they're looking for in somebody they think is successful in the company, that can tell you a lot about how to give your message successfully to somebody else.
So, Katie, when you said you were working with customers, where are you? Are you onboarding professional services or in the CSM role? I didn't have a follow-up for that.
Yeah. So my team right now is more in the professional services side of things. I run the implementation specialists who do a lot of the project coordination and management, the training, navigating the complex structures at other people's organizations and supporting our deployments team who drive the technical integrations of our product.
And so you were talking a little bit before about during the sales process, you're kind of defining what the project's going to look like and who the various, whether they're the investors or what role they play. As it transitions into your group, what do you find often about who's invested and who's the customer versus what you usually have to learn post-sales process as you start to do your initial onboarding?
So I think universally, or at least at any onboarding or implementation job that I've been in, we know who the signer of the contract is. We know who that initial stakeholder that gave the approval for the projects to move forward is. What we get to find out as we navigate the project itself is who's going to be doing all of the work, who is responsible for rallying these internal project leaders to get them on board with dedicating all these resources to helping us get this project up and running. So this can be internal project or communication managers, team leaders for technical or engineering teams. We know who the overall person who says yes to everything is, and then they become very hands off often. It's navigating and understanding who we need to rally on their side internally to get this project off the ground.
And I'm assuming you'll start off with some kind of kickoff, right? Where do you start in that process?
So we start with a scope confirmation, and a part of this is identifying the key stakeholders that we will be working with at this organization. We have a list of roles and responsibilities based on what's been confirmed in the project scope. So who's going to be responsible for like this aspect of the technical integration? Who has access to this specific part of your internal systems? Please, hopefully somebody has the password to this, because if not, we're going to have a hard time. I found that having that checklist of these are the things that we need, who internally at your side is capable of facilitating these.
And Katie, we're talking about why it's so important to get stakeholder buy-in. What happens if you don't get buy-in from all the stakeholders when you're kicking off these projects, either client-facing or maybe it's an initiative internally?
Yeah. So the biggest problem that you'll face both with client-facing and internal projects is delays. The second that we have somebody who doesn't see the value in what you're proposing and what you're trying to do, they'll just delay it. Resources will be pulled to other projects. Maybe funding will dry up for what it is that you're trying to do. And then you're just kind of sitting there and waiting. For customer projects, this is really bad because a lot of the times that customer has already paid you for your services or for this product. That's just a lot of wasted money that my team is responsible for. Internally, it can stagnate the growth of what you're trying to do, whether it's implementing a new process or tool for your teams. Not getting that buy-in is guaranteed stagnation, which is never a good thing.
And Katie, real quick, Kevin, follow up real quick. So what do you, let's say you start a project and you identify a stakeholder that's not bought in. Maybe it's, I have other projects, so this isn't at the top of my radar, and it could lead to delays or increased costs or whatever it may be that's going to throw the project off. If someone in our audience is in the midst of that, right, or faces that, what recommendations would you have to address that stakeholder to help get them on board once they have priorities elsewhere?
So the first thing I always recommend is going to sound so simple, but it's just to ask them why. Ask them, what is it about this that isn't speaking to you? What other priorities do you have going on that are trumping this? What concerns do you have about this project? I think people sometimes forget to ask why explicitly, and it solves a lot of problems. Something else that we found to be helpful is rallying the people who initially gave you your support. This could mean for client-facing projects, looping your sales team back in who sold them initially on this, getting that person who signed off to help you get support from these stakeholders who are now saying no or creating blockers. Internally, that can mean gathering the people from other departments that you got behind this initiative to help reiterate why this is so important or why this needs to happen now. And then the third tactic that I always recommend is creating a sense of urgency. If people don't understand the need to move something forward, they'll often defer to just letting it, I guess, stagnate. So there's a lot of ways that you can create a sense of urgency. Don't outright lie to people. Don't start setting physical fires to get things moving quickly. That's not what I'm recommending officially. But there are tactics that you can use to help people understand that we do need to get things moving. And here's what will happen if we don't. Or here's where we could have been initially. And here's the value you could have been seeing if we had just managed to move this ahead.
I'm assuming that, especially with client projects, you're trying to establish initial deadlines of when everything's got to be done. So as you start moving down a process, what are the things that you're doing to keep people involved? And as you have successes, how are you celebrating them to keep driving your success forward and getting continued buy-in?
So I think you mentioned celebrating success there. I think it's very important. When any big initiative or project starts, one of the first things that we define are the milestones or the roadmap to success. A part of that is identifying what the success metrics are, because it's going to differ from project to project depending on what you're working on. I'm also a huge fan of over communication. I want there to be full transparency to my stakeholders to what's going on. Seeing that timeline of small victories from start to end helps paint this bigger picture of a larger success. Another thing you can do is weekly project updates. This is what's been done so far. This is what we're working on next. Here's where we need support, just to keep those lines of communication open. Internally, a really great way to celebrate milestones is shouting out the people who participated in helping you achieve these different milestones and helping everybody feel like they are a part of driving success in this initiative. As much as it's important to celebrate successes, it's also important to be transparent about things that aren't working or unforeseen circumstances that come up. Something is inevitably going to go wrong. That's just the way that life goes. It's very chaotic, which is super fun for all of us. But it shows that you can adapt and overcome resistance, which helps to build trust with your stakeholders, that they can rely on you to not only get through the easy, celebrating successes, but to show that you can continue through adversity.
And Kay, you touched on this, but I was leading into going to ask you about communication. You already brought it up. I'm not shocked that this plays an important role as you continue to gain trust and buy-in from stakeholders. What channels do you use for communication? Is it email? If you talk about the weekly calls, do you use other channels? Curious how you keep everyone informed and up to speed on what's happening with the project.
Yeah. So it's actually been really cool to see how communication styles have changed since COVID happened and everything moved to a remote first workplace. So much of communication is reliant on reading facial cues and making eye contact and picking up on subtext. That's become very difficult when you're looking at somebody through a screen, or like we all do, staring at yourself and wondering if that's really what you look like when you say certain things. And so I think that there's had to be this global leveling up of written communication skills to make sure that people are actually conveying what they want to convey in the way that they want to convey it. That can be a lot easier when you're celebrating good things, but when you're sharing bad news, it can be really difficult to communicate and convey that in a way that creates a sense of urgency, but also doesn't make people want to throw their laptops out a window and shut the project down completely. Yeah. Weekly status updates and emails are very important. I encourage my team to get on calls with their project leaders at least once a week to go through in that verbal way as well, so that everybody can feel connected on what's going on. If you have any kind of client-facing project tool that can send automatic updates, that can be super useful and save you a lot of time. However, you can communicate things, whether you're sending a slide deck together with like stats that are on it. I've honestly worked on a couple projects where the project leader's favorite thing was to get a GIF that summarized the emotional feelings behind the project week after week. And that became challenging after a while. The different communication styles work for different people. I think that's a part of identifying your stakeholders as well. To some people, data speaks really loudly and they don't care about plots and sentences. They want to see numbers. Some people see numbers, get a headache, and want a beginning, middle, end lovely story put together. It really depends on who your audience is and what it is you're trying to communicate to them.
I can already tell that at some point this week, I will spend way too much time looking at GIFs on like, how do I celebrate each milestone in a meme or a GIF? I can already see it happening. And you mentioned that seeing people on camera nowadays, which seems to be so big for our team, being on camera is so important, but you have clients that still sometimes it's tough when you can't see someone, you can't read their expressions. It becomes quite challenging.
I was thinking about the types of communication. I've had conversations with my teams about making sure when you're communicating, if you are consistent in how you communicate and you communicate in a regular cadence, then you're never sharing news that's unknown.
Mhm.
If you never share news that's unknown, then you're never running into a major problem. You're addressing issues before they become big issues. So if you've got the weekly status updates, as soon as something starts going off to the side, make sure you're proactive about sharing it. One of the things when Rob and I started this, and I shared with him, was bad news never gets better with age.
Go for
And
sure. I've not found that to be any different since he first mentioned it to me.
yeah, and I learned that at a company I worked at several years ago. Once I heard that, it just makes so much sense. As you start sharing bad news early, it turns out it's not so bad a lot of the times. It's it's only when you hold on to it and you know, try and fix things thinking that maybe you've got something, a way of resolving an issue, that it becomes a problem. It's much better because it drives by. And I think that's a lot of what I'm hearing you say is you're looking for processes and ways to drive buy-in throughout the process. Buy-in isn't a one-time thing. Is that correct?
When I first started thinking about this process of getting buy-in, I talked to a lot of internal VPs, C-suites, and other leaders to figure out, okay, how, like, when someone's trying to get you to do something, what works, what doesn't work. And the number one piece of feedback I got back was, when they lose trust in somebody, somebody can come in vague with a lot of promises. And then as soon as something starts to derail, they lose all faith in that person and all faith in that project. I love that bad news doesn't get better with age. I'm probably going to steal that and just start selling that to my team. So thank you for that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no royalties with us, Katie. Coming on the show, you get that royalty free. You can use that all the time.
Nice. Sweet.
I'm curious, talk about communication and crafting messages. As you work with your team, does AI play a role in this? Where does AI play a role with your teams? And is there a line there? I'm curious where you fall in this.
I have a lot of personal feelings about AI. Full transparency, I have a theater background. I went to school for performing. I was a performer for a very long time. I have a lot of friends who are writers, authors, and playwrights. The artist part of my brain that still has a foot in that world hates AI because of how it's being used in that industry. But I think that AI does have a place in helping people to improve their communication skills as long as it's used as a support mechanism and not as a replacement. Having to interview people for spots on my team, it is very, very obvious when somebody puts forth the most beautifully written cover letter that you've ever seen and it's eloquent and paints a beautiful picture, and then they struggle to form a sentence together when they're speaking to you. I understand why people would fall to that, but I think that you're doing yourself a disservice by putting all of your tools in the AI basket. So I think it can be used absolutely if you're, trying to write an email delivering bad news, let's say, and you're not sure how to write it. AI things can help you to better understand how to form that sentence or how to structure this paragraph in a way that seems less aggressive or alarmist. Um, but yeah, I personally don't think that anything should be ripped and replaced with AI, but it can be a good support tool for helping you to level up your own communication skills.
No, I agree. You lose the genuine voice when you just completely outsource it to AI, but it can be a great tool. All right, Kev, are we ready to go to the hard-hitting questions, or you have more for Katie here on buy-in?
No, I think we're good on buy-in. I will say I am working with my kids and actually some other folks on how you develop your own voice with AI. So, because I think it's a great tool for helping you learn how to better express yourself if you're using it that way, as opposed to using it as a supplement. In other words, if you outsource to it, it's a supplement. You're not really getting anything. But if you're really trying to think through how to build a voice and communicate topics, you can actually use AI to really develop it out further. So I do think there's both sides to that.
I knew that would get a response, Kev, from you. I knew the AI conversation would get a response. I knew it. I knew it. All right, Katie. Are you ready for our rapid fire section?
All right, hit me. I'm ready. Let's go.
Early bird or night owl?
The morning time is terrible, and I am not alive until about 11 a.m. most days.
I'm glad we scheduled this recording in the afternoon.
What's a favorite book you've read recently?
Oh my gosh. One of the best books that I've read recently was Goldfinch. I
Oh,
reread that one not too long ago. And then I have to plug A Court of Thorns and Roses. I know that it's all the rage right now, but I love it. There's a huge fan club at work. Can't recommend it enough.
awesome. You are in Hamilton, Ontario, right? So if Kevin and I are going to visit, what's the one place we have to see and where are we eating?
Oh, okay. The one place you have to see, I think, is Gage Park. It's the biggest park in Hamilton. It's absolutely beautiful. Lots of really cool trees, or the Arboretum if you like trees like I do. Super cool. Um, for breakfast, you're going to Motel. It is the best breakfast I've ever had in my whole life. And for dinner, you're going to go to the Electric Diner because they have the most fun milkshakes and everything's 80s themed. It's super cool.
All right. Do you have a favorite sports team up in Ontario?
I know of sports. I've seen a couple times. Honestly, I'm super into Formula One net right now, and I have been for the last couple of years. That's like the only sport that I watch consistently. Otherwise, I think I knew who a baseball player was about 10 years ago, and that's it.
I just started watching F1 this year because my son got into it. Okay, it's really
Yeah.
amazing. I couldn't believe how big it is. It's huge. If you could travel anywhere that you've never been,
I'm going to Peru, I think. My partner went years ago, had a great time. Can't stop talking about it. I think the mountains a cool culture that I haven't been exposed to before. So that's where I'm going.
it's awesome. Is that Machu Picchu, right? I'm probably butchering that.
Friends that went there this summer, and some of the pictures were absolutely unbelievable. The Rainbow Mountains, just unreal.
Yeah, it seems amazing. And compared to other places that I've been, it's a very different environment from other places that I've seen. So I'd like to be exposed to that part of the globe a little bit.
Awesome. Katie, where can our audience find more about you? Where can they check you out? Is it LinkedIn?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think that's one of the only social media things I have up to date right now. Everything else is just full of pictures of my cats, which no one wants to see or cares about. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn for sure.
Find Katie on LinkedIn. If you want to find her cats, direct message her. Maybe she can get you some access to that as well. So, Katie, thanks so much for being on the show. It was a great conversation. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing with our audience how you get internal buy-in or stakeholder buy-in. It is an important topic that we haven't talked about in the show before, Kev. So I'm glad we had a chance to do it. So our audience, as always, thanks for listening. Don't forget, subscribe, like, share it, tell your friends and family about it. And let us know which guests and topics you'd like to have us have on our show upcoming. As always, thanks for listening and
Keep on playing.
So tune in now and join the